Recently, Light has released some new L16 images shot by Sean Welch from Banff, Canada, and we're going to take a quick dive into those. This is Planet Mitch from lightRumors.co, and frankly, it probably won't be a quick dive because I tend to get into a lot of details and talk a lot, so be prepared. Before we get into that, let me just quickly remind you, yes, quickly, seems to be a theme, about our new ebook, The Top 10 Reasons the Light L16 Will Change Photography Forever. That's available to lightrumors.co members, so do a quick jump over to lightrumors.co/join, sign up, and we will send you that ebook instamatically, or should I say, quickly. We're going to quickly go through these images in Lightroom, and just before we get started, they're not in the same order as they are on the website. This happens to be the last image, but I wanted to go through them sort of smaller to larger. The first batch is all smaller with the maximum width of 2500 pixels, and then the last four are larger. They're 19 megapixels. These are 5 megapixel images. I don't see anything really significant in this window shot to really talk about. There is some good light to dark areas, but I'm just not that excited by it, and I don't know that there's that much to learn from this. The thing that interests me about this image are two things. Number one is the skater, and number two is about the only thing that I can find wrong with this image. Well, okay. I'm sure the pixel peepers would have found many more things than I probably did, but every image that comes out of the L16 is going to be examined closely for quite a while to see whether or not it's DSLR-like. If it's better or worse than DSLR images, and we'll talk about that a lot. The first thing that bothered me when I saw this is that I felt like the gentleman was a little bit skewed, because I assume that he is moving quickly down this hill, and my first question is whether or not the L16 is having trouble keeping up as it scans the image. I think I figured out that everything's okay, but until we get more images that are shot with action in them, I'm not really going to know. But he just looks a little sideways, like if you were shooting a video with a DSLR or any CMOS sensor and you get what's called rolling shutter, then the stuff that's at the bottom is a little bit skewed from the stuff that's at the top. I don't see that showing up in anything else, so I just don't know. The other thing that bothers me is the top of the mountain up here. And if you look where the cursor is, there's a very sharp edge to this little segment right here. But the rest of it isn't as sharp as that. So I think there was a little problem with the depth map and the way they processed this, and if they had really thought about it and then gone in and looked at it a little bit, they might have used the repair tools that are in Lumen, the software, the desktop software that they have provided with the camera, and maybe unsharpened that a little bit. 99% of the people looking at this image are never, ever, ever going to see that. And if they do, they're not going to go, oh, well, that stinks. Most of the segments in here through the trees, and I'm not going to blow this up because it's, again, a 5 it's a 5 megapixel image. I made up a new word, a megapixel. But there's clearly good sky, even though it's cloudy. We see good details all along the trees. There's dark sections of the trees. There's light sections. We've got high to low light areas. So overall, I think this is a pretty decent image. I did see several people commenting online that they thought that the water was blurred in this one. Well, yeah, it's blurred. Was the shutter speed set correctly to capture the motion of the water? Maybe not. Is that a problem? No. Is the water blown out here? Is there no detail in here? Well, let's go out of full screen in Lightroom, and if you look over at the histogram, there are no blown out whites and there are no crushed blacks. Can you recover this a little bit if you want to turn down the highlights? Let's turn those down a little bit. Sure, you can see some more structure in that water. You want to turn up the whites? I don't care. This image holds up fairly well. I did not find any major problems in stitching or anything else. So, good image. I think we're okay here. Let's move on. Now, we talked about this as an Instagram image in one of my earlier videos. The sky is blown out way up here on the top. And if you look at the histogram, it's definitely blown out. So if you pull down the highlights a little bit, you can you can bring their little bit of color into there. There's a tiny little bit of blue, which you probably can't see on a YouTube video. So you can recover that a little bit, but it's obviously anything that's blown in camera is not going to be recoverable. And then you've ended up turning down some of the brights in the segment down here in the water, so depends upon what you want to do, but there is a little flexibility there. We can see some dark areas. If you want to pull up the shadows, you can see more into the dark areas if that's important to you. So we do have good dynamic range here. Again, this is a 5 megapixel image. Megapixel. God, I can't say that word today. Sorry. It's funny when I can humor myself, isn't it? I did not find any stitching issues when I looked at this in some detail. If you look at this tree up here at the top, for example, because of the blown highlights, it looks a little dicey. Could they have done this better? I don't know. Haven't had a camera yet. Hey, Light, send me a camera to be able to really tell. And you know, it would be nice to take multiple exposures, you know, to set it lower and higher to see what differences we can make in an image like this. But since I don't have one, let's move on. I didn't publish this immediately. Obviously, I have spent some time looking at these images, and they've been online for a while, and I wanted to see what some of the people were saying in some of the websites. It hasn't gotten a whole lot of coverage, but it was covered on DP Review. I think it was DP Review. And some other websites. And so I wanted to see what people were saying before I made my own comments. And the biggest complaint about this image is that some people say the trees are mushy, and in certain areas you can't see any fine detail in the greens. And that means that the small sensors on the L16 or the small lenses and the combination is having difficulty. I don't know that I see that, but until, again, we have a DSLR to shoot side by side and go, all right, here's a full frame DSLR. Here is what the L16 is doing. Here's where it's failing. Here's where it's excelling. We're not going to have the ability to really, really totally know. There was one gentleman who complained that he thought that the jacket had large areas of just blurriness. And the only way to find out about that, and again, this is a smaller image, is to go up to like 2:1, and let's look at that. Or let's make it even more significant. Let's go to 4:1. What the heck? Is there inconsistency in some of this right in here? I don't know. Again, it could have a tiny little bit of softening. Does it look wrong? Does it look like the camera has just totally lost all the details? I don't think so. And again, we're looking at it 4 times normal size. Could there maybe be some wrinkles in here that are being washed out by the sensor? Could you repair that with Lumen? I don't know. Obviously, I don't have the camera to tell. Since we're here at 4 times pixels, you know, there are segments in this area that are hard to tell whether or not the sensor is just not able to detect those details. Again, we're looking at it 4 times blown up from what they gave us, so I don't know. Obviously, let's do one of my favorites. Let's throw Color Miracle on it, for example, and notice that it quickly pulled down the sky a good bit, brought some different color into here, pulled out some details by turning on, excuse me, a little bit of clarity. For a 5 megapixel image, I think this is holding up pretty well, don't you? Right. Again, if you're going in and looking at it at 2,000%, you might find some issues. Is the normal person looking at this, and even if it was printed on the wall, going to find issues and go, oh, well, that stinks, I'm not buying that camera? No, they're going to say, that's a nice image. This image kind of just knocks your socks off a bit because it has color, it has shadows, it has mountains, it has brights, it has lights, it has darks. There's lots to look at. I wanted to show you again that this is 2500 by 1875, so it's about 4.8 megapixels. But I want to look at this full screen and get rid of all that other stuff. Now, if you see this image on a website, you're going to go, that's pretty nice. Again, focus virtually to infinity. Because it's a nature shot, you want all this stuff to be in focus. There's down here, there's good visuals of the letters in the boats. They're not sharp, they're not distorted. If you kind of look underneath the boat here, you can see into the water a bit, which is kind of cool, or over along here. You're seeing, obviously, the reflections. If I zoom in 2 times, and again, this is a 5 megapixel image, there's a lot of detail back here in the mountains and in the trees. I don't see any sections that are stitching problems or really small sensor you can't see detail problems. You look along all these trees, there's very good detail. You can see into the darks, and then up in the mountains at the top, there's no chromatic aberration showing up. There aren't any real problems along the edges. I'm not seeing JPEG compression issues that we maybe have seen in other images. So that's pretty good, isn't it? So let's look at what would happen if we throw some filters on there. Let's go back out full screen. We've pulled down the brights a little bit. We've darkened some of the shadows. I'm not seeing noise. A lot of people talk about noise, and I'm frankly not seeing a whole lot of noise. If we look in dark areas, let's pull up the shadows even more, because that's kind of where you would start seeing noise. Is there a tiny little bit of noise in here? Maybe. Would you be getting noise from a DSLR if you pulled this up? Maybe. Again, we would love to have a DSLR or a light L16 to compare, but I've pulled the shadows 100%. The highlights have been brought down. We can fool with contrast. What happens if I take this and sharpen it? Let's just have some fun. Let's go to detail and bump up the sharpening a whole bunch. Are you seeing some noise now? Okay. Oh, look, there's some noise down here in the sky. There's some noise. That's where sharpening really helps you see if there's noise. Would I sharpen this image that much? Heck no. It didn't need sharpening in the first place. Let's see about the sky up here. Are you seeing any noise? Okay, there's a tiny little bit of noise here. There's some noise. Alert! Alert! There's noise. But I've sharpened it like crazy. I mean, nobody would publish this image. Look at the edge of this. This just looks like an over-sharpened image. But are you seeing any noise in the sky? Hello, there's not much noise here. So let's bring that back down since we're zoomed in. Fix the sharpening. Look, the noise has gone away. Come down, back down here. Are you seeing any noise in there? I'm leaning forward so I can look really closely. There may be a little bit of a problem here. Oh, let's do my other trick. Let's do the luminosity slider and pull down the blues. So we've certainly got a little tiny bit of edge problem here. It's a problem, right? Well, I've pulled the blues down way too much. Let me zoom back out. The sky looks abnormal at this point, so that didn't really work well. But you do see a little bit along the edges. And I'm going to show you an image in a little bit that will show you that happens on most images that I've ever fooled with if you pull the colors down too much. If you try to fool too much with colors, you get some wonky edge sharpness problems. So even after I've fooled with it, this still looks like a darn good image. We've got highs and lows and lots of good things to see, pretty colors. Let me reset it back to where it was. This is the original. Okay, it looks a little flat, but that's why we have Lightroom, right? Well, I shouldn't even say flat. I mean, the colors are popping. Anyway, you get my point. I think this image works really well. And it's still one of the smaller ones. Taken from a different viewpoint, same lake, same almost time of day. We've got light on the mountains, we've got dark in the shadows. The boats are over here on the far right, if you see those over here. So let's do a similar thing and dive in and see if we can find any noise. At full resolution, I'm not seeing any noise up here. Let's see if we can zoom in. There's a little bit of noise down here in the lake. If we go over to the shadows, I'm not seeing a whole lot of noise. There's some noise over here in the rocks. Or wait, maybe those are rocks. I don't know. I don't see any noise up here along the sky. So this is another noise image, right? So let's get out of full screen and let's throw my color miracle on it to really make it burst from the seams. We've pulled the darks up a little bit. Let's go back to basic and let's pull the shadows up all the way. Are you seeing any noise in here? Okay, a little bit of noise over here. Some of that, by the way, might be if this was one of the images that was shot at 28 millimeters on the L16. They have said in the details, and I can't tell 100% whether this is one of those images, but I'm going to make a good guess. I think it's a good, educated guess. In the manual, they have said that the edges, 28 millimeters to 35 millimeters, due to the way they are overlapping the sensors and the images, there isn't enough overlap on the far edges shot at 28. So you will get some additional noise and additional softness on the edges. And I think that's possibly what we're seeing here, because we have a lot more noise in the very edge of this image, especially up along here, that sort of suddenly disappears when you get further into the image. If I go into 4:1, for example, and you can see that there's more noise at the edge of the image than there is right in here. So I suspect this is one of those images that was maybe shot at 28 millimeters. And if I'm guessing, there's almost a line that goes right along here where the image overlap kind of happens. It's kind of like it's a little bit sharper here than it is here. And again, I've pulled this way down, so this is not what you would call normal. If I reset to normal as shot, then we still have that problem. So overall, would you put this on your wall? I think you would. Nice image. This image, we're bumping up now to the 19 megapixels. This one is a bit larger than the others. And we're seeing a few more problems in this one than others, or opportunities, as some people like to say. And we've got a bit of noise over here in the cloudy mountain areas. We've got a little bit of noise up in the sky. Let me turn on my magic cursor. We have problems, and all of the pixel peepers on the different websites are just really angry about this grass down here. Angry. I mean, angry about it. What's wrong with these people that they're angry? I don't understand. And we have good definition in the mountains. We don't have chromatic aberration to worry about. Is it a perfect image? No. Let's zoom in, and this is zooming in 4:1. So, of course, we're seeing issues at this kind of level. Here's the noise that I was talking about in the sky, in the dark areas, the clouds. If I go up here, you can see a bit of noise. There's some real noise here. Some real noise in the sky. And if you zoom out, I mean, you can actually sort of barely see it. I know I can see it down here in this area. Is it okay? Again, 99% of the people aren't going to see it. Let's zoom in on the grass, all right? Let's talk about the grass. And I'm going to go to 2:1. Hold on. Okay, we're at 2:1, and you see more noise here in the sky, but we want to talk about the grass. And again, we're looking at 2:1. It's not 100%, it's 200%. Are there details missing, or does this look over-sharpened, or does this look like maybe a cell phone image? It might be. It might not be perfect in grass. We saw that on the Point Reyes image of the boat. If you watched that video, plug. Maybe the light has problems with some fine details in greens or in grasses. Is it completely sharp like a DSLR? Again, I don't know because I don't have one with me. Could it be better? I think they would say, yeah, we'd like to improve that. And maybe in the future, we'll get a software release that does improve that. You can see some of the hair on this animal. Is it crisp and sharp like we would like to see? I don't think so. If you zoom out to 1:1, is this image acceptable? Yes. It's only 19 megapixel image. My original 5D Mark II, I think was a 12 megapixel, and I think I had some issues with sharpness with that camera. I don't. Anyway, could it be better? Yes, I think it will be better in the future. Is this a good image? Yes. Could I do my little tricks and show some more issues? Maybe. I don't see any stitching issues. We see some noise. We see some problems with fine details. Let's move on. Now, this is one of the first images we have seen from them that are dark. So this is good. This is something to really dive in and look at, right? My first thought was, holy cow, they've got some problems right along here with stitching or sharpness or whatever. And then I realized that's just a normal windshield on a car because the windshield wiper has smushed a whole bunch of dirt over here. So let's not worry about that. Let's zoom in and look at the section here of the car. We're in the darkest section of any image we've seen before. Is there noise in here? Yes, there's some noise. Okay, zooming into 2:1 down here, we're finding some sharpness issues. There's some noise here. If we look down here, we see definitely some noise. We're in the darkest part of the image of any image we've seen before. Are there any problems here? I don't know. Again, this, if we go back and pull out, we've got sharpness. As I zoom in again, we've got sharpness in here. Maybe we had focus here. So is any camera system going to make this sharp and that sharp? Don't know. Do we see any problems in the tree areas? Let me drag around. Could some of this be a little muddy? Yes, it could be a little muddy. I don't know. Are we able to see some muddy things in here? Maybe. I don't know. I would like to see a DSLR image. I'm sorry. It's hard for me, and I think it's hard for anyone, even if they say they know, if they've been a pixel peeper for decades. Maybe they understand dynamic range better than I do. Maybe they understand what should be sharp and what shouldn't be sharp better than I do, in which case we need to hire them and not me. But for a low light image, I think this one works well. Would I like it to be sharper? Yes. Let's see what happens if I go in and put my color miracle on it. Let's see what happens. Do we get lots of noisy noise? Does it get worse over here in the corners? It does get a bit worse. Would I put that image through that? By the way, looking at the histogram, we don't have any blacks blown out, right? Or do we? Yeah, we have a few. All right, there's tiny little bit of blacks blown out, or crushed, as no highlights blown. Although I would tend to say this is kind of blown, if you ask me. I don't know whether there's detail there to see or not, but I'm kind of surprised that it doesn't show on this histogram as blown. For our very first really dark image, I think this is holding up pretty well. The pixel peepers would be The pixel peepers would be screaming, "Hell no, I don't like this image." But would it be acceptable for a magazine to put this on their website? Would they be able to print it? I think they would. It's telling a story. Heck, I might even say the framing's not right, but that's a whole other story, isn't it? Now, this is the first image of the batch that really has some issues. I don't see any what I would call stitching issues where things don't line up or maybe are totally not appropriate. I do see up here some problems in the green areas. And maybe if you want to call it stitching issues, because I think the depth map and the initial cut of the software didn't necessarily pull this one out properly. But if you look in this section right here, we have a section that is, if you look in the bright area right along here, and again, we're at 2:1, we have fairly decent sharpness. But then we just have this section that is totally blurry. Right in through, highlight this, right in through here. And right in through here. But it's kind of sharp over here. And if you look at this part over on this side, I think right here there's a kind of a line right here where maybe there was an overlap on the images. And this side is sharp, and this side on the right side is not as sharp. It just kind of looks like there's a line right there. So, theoretically, I would think if you notice this in Lumen, if you were looking at this in detail, you would go in and try to repair that. and maybe it would repair just fine. Again, since they haven't given me the software yet, I don't know. So, that was a problem. Do you notice it? Can you tell it? If you were looking at this image, what are you focusing on? You're focusing on the building and the trees in the front, and your mind is looking at the mountains in the back and saying, oh, it's mountains. It's not going to be perfect. Could this be improved? Yes. Is there any depth problem where the house isn't the house? It's not a house. It's a hotel. Where the hotel isn't sharp or the background. The background is not appropriate. I haven't found any problems like that in here. Do we see this is sharper than the background? So this has been, I think, appropriately depth mapped. Okay, I think we're all right. Do we get to the edge and maybe this is a 28 millimeter image and we have softness on the side? That might be true because we certainly can see some sharpness right along this ridge line, and it's maybe not so sharp and maybe noisier over here. But overall, we have some noise in the sky. But overall, again, we're pixel peeping at 2:1. I don't think people are going to complain about this image, do you? Let's have fun with our color miracle. I think that's probably a little overdone. I probably would tweak some things. We've produced some more noise and issues in the sky. Most people probably wouldn't be happy with this, the way it treated it. Certainly have pulled out some problems here. You can really see this now that whole segment is not the way it should be. And we definitely have a line right here, so we should have done that to begin with, right? To pull that out. But I had to pull it out in order to show you that it was really a problem. And it is kind of interesting because maybe the trees right along at the top of this ridge are maybe okay, and maybe it's just had a problem in here. I don't know. It's hard to know because we've not had our hands on the software yet. And I know I keep saying that, but if I had my hands on the software, I could test this, right? I could really try it out and see. So here's the after image, and let me go back to the before. This is quote straight out of the camera. And oh, by the way, let me zoom in over here. I don't know what's going on over here. Was there a building or something to the side, or is there some kind of wonkiness? I don't know what this is. But I did notice, and I said I would tell you everything that I see. Well, I didn't say that, but I don't know what that is. Let's move on to the next one. This is the last image in the batch, and this one has the most opportunity for failure, right? We talked about we've not seen a whole lot of low light images. Well, we've got some brights and we've got some darks. We've got some dynamic range in this one, don't we? Straight out of the camera, this looks pretty good. If I zoom in, let's zoom into this corner down here. Is there a little bit of noise down here? Yes. Is anybody going to notice that? No. Let's pull down to this section in here. Do we have good sharpness in here with the trees and the tree line? And we have a silhouette, and oh look, we can probably see there's some details in here. Maybe we fool with things, we can fix that, pull that out a little bit if we wanted to. Of course, I think we like the silhouette, right? Let's look at the edge of this skyline here. Skyline is normally applied to a tree. A building or a city. I can't talk today. So, look at this. Right along here, there's this tree peeking over the top of the ridge because of the bright sky in the background. We have a little bit of an issue going on here, right? Well, let's hold on to that thought for just a second. We're going to talk about that again. Do we have noise back here in the shadow areas? Maybe. In the darkness, do we have noise? Maybe. It's not very obvious from this, even at 2:1. Do we have any noise in the sky? I'm not really seeing any noise up here, even at 2:1. We saw some noise down here in the lower corner. But let's also look down here and see how well this is working. And again, this is 2:1. This is a 19 megapixel image. Is this exactly sharp and crisp, this weed, this brush? Do we have maybe an issue right up along here or along there? Maybe. Are we finally detailing these rushes, brush over here? Maybe. Is it a problem? If you go back and zoom out to the full view, straight out of the camera, nobody's going to look at that and go, oh, well, there's a problem there. Maybe the wind blew while this was being shot. Maybe the shutter speed was slow. And maybe it just moved a little bit. Are there imperfections in the algorithm? Quite possibly, okay? But it's minor, right? I mean, this is minor. Is there a problem pulling out that tiny little brush there from the background? Maybe that one got botched. Okay, if you're complaining about this, I think you got some real issues. I'm just getting fed up with the folks. Now, one thing I'm curious about is that this section right in here. Let me go back and fully highlight it. I'm a little curious. Again, the sky is brighter in this section, right? So we're going to see brightness in here, and this is going to be more darker purples. Is there something going on with the color rendition in here? Again, I'm at 2:1. Is there maybe a little flow over here with orange colors into purple colors? Maybe. Is this kind of like somebody going to say, I know they're going to say it, so I'll say it for them. Well, that's not very sharp in there, and that's just showing you, just like the grass, that the L16 can't resolve this kind of wind detail, blah, 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 blah. And they're going to say I'm an L16 fanboy. So if we zoom back out, does anybody see that? Maybe you see it if you're really, really looking hard. Does it look a little wonky? I don't think so. I think, to me, it looks like, well, there's some stuff in the water. Is it really wonky over here with the colors? Is it not sharp? I don't know. Again, I would like to have a DSLR. I'm sorry, I keep saying that. Is it perfect? Maybe not. Zooming back out. Hey, let's go look at it. Throw my color miracle on it. I know this is going to look really wonky, but that's okay. It'll show us some other things, right? Look at the details in here. Oh my God, I can hear the pixel peepers saying, but that's muddy as heck. That's not sharp, that's not crisp. We're pulling that out from virtual darkness, right? Let's go back to what we had before. You could barely see that there's something here. If I pull up the shadows, you can now suddenly see that there's some stuff there. Is it finally resolved? No. Is that a problem? No. Well, unless you really wanted to pull that out and make this into an HDR image, that could be a problem. Is there some botchiness here? Again, we're at 2:1. Maybe. But no, nobody's going to go like that. Nobody's going to... They want the silhouette. That's what makes this image so cool, is the silhouette, right? You don't want to see those details. If you did, you would have set the exposure differently, and we would be talking about that image and not this one. This is an awesome image. Let me throw the color miracle on it again, just for fun. Sharpness all along the ridge line. We have trees. We don't have any chromatic aberration. We do have a little bit of noise, a tiny little bit of noise, but this is a dark image, right? Is there noise down here? Yes. Would a normal camera have noise? Yes. I know, I'm being redundant. The original image looks great. Now, I went out on the web and I pulled off a DSLR image. obviously not shot in the same place. I tried to find one shot in the same place, but this was shot somewhere else. It's an awesome image. Very nice colors. I love the lake. Are there any problems with it? Well, let's look in this section right over here. You remember how we talked about that tree and how hard it was right? At the bottom it was okay, but then when it got up into the sky, it was orange and looked all wonky. This is a DSLR image, and I've blown it up 2:1. Guess what? Look right here. If you don't see it, let me highlight it for you. It's right here. These trees are blown out-ish, color-ish problems because of the sky in the background. So the DSLR has the same problem as the L16, if you want to call it a problem. Is there noise along in here? I don't see any noise. You got to really start pixel peeping. Okay, there's a tiny little bit of noise in here, right? So what happens if I pull this out? Let's just go find out what happens if let's do the color miracle, right? That'll really wonk it out. Oh, look, we can see some trees. Is there some muddiness in here? Maybe it's sharper than the L16. Maybe this is better. Maybe the L16 really sucks. I'm being sarcastic. Yes, I agree that there's more detail in here that wasn't there. If I go back to the original, we don't see that detail. We see kind of a line of trees in there. If we put it back in, you can see the trees better and they're sharper. Okay, so maybe the DSLR is better. Maybe we just quit talking about the L16. No. The L16 will improve. Will it be perfect? No. Will somebody be perfectly happy with this image at full size, in full frame? I think they will. In summary, looking at the L16 images has shown that, yes, there are some issues. We hope they can be resolved in software. We hope that future generations of the camera will be even better. I think, obviously, if you look at a DSLR, they have been perfecting DSLRs for 10, 15 years with digital sensors, so they've got quite a bit of a head start. Could the L16 images get better? Yes! We certainly hope so. But primarily, we would love to have you come over to lightRumors.co and become a free member. Free membership lets you comment, lets you submit blog posts. When you have your L16, you can submit video as well as still galleries. Eventually, we'll be having contests, we'll be having giveaways, but we have a very active, growing community. Thanks for watching. I hope you get something out of this. Please comment below if you would like to tell me how crazy I am or how stupid I am. Except I don't really like that word. So please gently tell me that you think I'm crazy. This is Planet Mitch from lightrumors.co. I hope you find the light.